Welcome to Show Money, the only show exclusively dedicated to the business of mixed martial arts. I'm Paul Gift, the economist, and finally back from Hawaii, we have Jason Cruz, the lawyer, and we have John Nash, the man who knows everyone and everything in mixed martial arts. You can find Jason Cruz at MMA Payout. You can find John Nash and I right here at Bloody Elbow. And before we get started with the topic of the day, one topic, which is the UFC sale. For those of you who are wondering, when you order a picture frame on Amazon, every once in a while they mess up and send you a badass training sword. So for the price of a picture frame, this thing is awesome. I'm the king of the north. All right, but now let's get started with the sale. If you haven't been, if you've been living under a rock, you might not know the UFC was sold. But just quick recap: we're recording this on Friday, July 15th, and last Sunday night, the news officially came out that WME-IMG purchased the UFC for a total valuation of $4 billion with backing from Silver Lake and KKR, which are private equity firms, and Michael Dell's investment company. And so the first question of the day is, what do you think of that valuation? $4 billion total valuation for the company. John Nash, what are your thoughts?
I'm a little surprised because, you know, every evaluation I've seen before was lower than that, and I know they'd a couple times before had Goldman Sachs or someone make a valuation of the company. But I'm not floored by it. I mean, in a weird way, it doesn't seem that incredible when you compare it to. It seems incredible when you compare it to like the idea that Dodgers sold for $2 billion and the Clippers will sold for $2 billion, and that this is selling for twice as much. And you look at the numbers, only $600 million a year in revenue, and you think, how the heck could they ever make their money back? But I think the $4 billion price is, they're looking at the track history of the company, and the track history is basically the revenue and has been going up every year almost consistently, a few small dips, but overall from 2005, what, 50 million to over 600 million last year. It looks like it's going to do better this year. They look at that. They look at the fact that their profit margins are immense. Last year about a 40% EBITDA margin. So and they're looking at that and saying, well, on top of that, we have potential for a new TV deal. We have potential to expand into China. We have potential to add greater sponsorship value because the sponsorship's only going to go up now with the Reebok deal, eliminating all the competition in the cage from the fighter sponsors. So there's all these avenues for additional revenue at the margins they get. So I could kind of see that their future projections are, even in the cyclical nature of MMA, that it'll dip after Rousey and Conor leave. It's going to go 2-3 years later, another star will appear, it'll blow up again. So I see all that, and I can see, okay, that's what they're looking at. They're looking at, not 600 million in revenue. They're looking at $1 billion in revenue a few years from now, and still probably keeping 40, maybe even higher margins, 50, 60% margins. You don't have to consistently give the fighters the same margins they're getting now. You can cut costs there by give them a raise, but give them a smaller chunk of the future pie. So that's my. Jason, what do you think? Were you shocked? Do you think I'm wrong? Do you think I'm full of shit?
Yeah, it's funny because Forbes came out and the Dallas Cowboys are valued at $4 billion too. So it's really, to me, I was a little shocked that it was so much. But after digesting some of the information, and thinking about the UFC business model, it definitely it points to the fact that they, William Morris and IMG thought that there is future growth in this industry, and you look at the young demo with disposable income. You look at the fact that there is the television deal, like you say, the revenues have ascended since 2005. There's the potential for China, which we'll probably talk about later on, and then one of the other things is the digital assets that they have, the over-the-top content with Fight Pass. Those things that are things that they can actually parse out in sports. You look at the NHL has parsed out their digital assets to sell them separate from their TV deal, and there's another revenue stream that potentially down the road that the new owners can exploit for the use of more revenue.
Yeah, and I wrote about this at Bloody Elbow, and so if anyone's listening and hasn't read it, go ahead and check it out. Is the UFC really worth $4 billion? Probably. So I guess my answer is probably. But I mean, in the world of acquisitions, $4 billion. I mean, it sounds crazy to say it, isn't that much. And then when you look, as you guys mentioned, when you look at their financials, it feels surprising because we compare them to other teams. But then when you think about the fact that they practically have a whole sport captured, and then you look at the financials, and then you look at the multiples and the cash flows and the margins, which is what those private equity VC guys are doing, and then essentially, I don't think they're thinking too much about stars and variants and pay-per-view and stuff like that. My personal opinion is that they understand that happens, but what they're thinking of is the ways they can grow it, not just into new markets, but more just biz dev with what you have, and the new deals they can make, the bigger deals they can make within the markets that already exist. So that's again, that's what I think was behind the $4 billion valuation. Now, will it end up being a good investment? Nobody can say for sure, right? No guarantees. But I think that's what was going through their head as to how we got, what to a lot of people seemed like a ginormous valuation. Yeah. But so, go ahead.
Yeah, there's also the value of the scarcity of it. NFL teams and NBA teams are often overvalued, not because of the huge revenues they make, and they make big revenues. People value those because there's a limited number of NFL teams. It's like buying a piece of art. It's buying a Picasso. It's something to save because no one else is going to get an NFL team, and no one else is going to own the Minnesota Vikings. There's one Minnesota Vikings. That's all you get. And with UFC, it's basically, I have the pride of owning basically a sport. The UFC is MMA. I mean, there's other promotions and stuff, but the UFC they have 85% of all top 10 talent. They have, every top fighter. They've got 90% of the market at least. They are MMA, and so it's like buying a sports team where there's an added value, the scarcity that no one else will have this. And I think that should be included into it. And then on top of that, you have all these revenue streams coming in. They're just going to grow Fight Pass. So you're at only 400,000 subscribers right now. When you add another 1 million subscribers on top of that, we're talking an extra 100 million a year right there. So you got that, and then you got the TV deal coming down the pipe. You've got expansion into new territories. So I wouldn't be surprised in 5 years, 6 years that even with a dip in pay-per-view, and of course pay-per-views are going to be more valuable because they're going to be selling it through Fight Pass and through directly, so they get to keep a bigger percentage of that in the future. But I wouldn't be surprised if they're 5 years from now they're not doing 600 million revenue, they're doing $1 billion revenue, even with a dip of star power.
I have a quick question for you guys. Do we know who at the UFC thought up Fight Pass or developed Fight Pass, or really where the inspiration was, whose idea it was?
I think it was some PA that just got let go with just a gift basket. He got a gift basket, and that's it.
Man, whoever thought of that idea should get a huge bonus, even though it's not going to happen, because the way the world's going, 10, 15, 20 years, in my opinion, that thing's going to be enormously valuable.
Yeah, and it also gives them a great control of just the market more than just UFC, with all those smaller promotions all starving for money, because smaller promotions are terrible in MMA. I mean, it's really it is a UFC business. All of them are getting a gift of some money from the UFC, so you keep all these promotions alive that I'm sure all of them have UFC exit contracts. You basically expanded a net of, you've created a minor league just for you that ropes in talent at an earlier stage to go into the UFC. And then eliminates, it makes it harder for anybody else. The barriers to entry just keep getting harder and harder and harder for any other promotion.
I know.
I wanted to point out one quick thing. I think one of the things that it was, if you could call it surprising, is the fact that the sport is fighting, and it does turn off a great segment of people, despite the fact that the biggest sport around, football, deals with a lot of violence. But it does seem like a niche area, because the greater population of people wouldn't necessarily think that cage fight is something they spend a Saturday night with. But it's turning out, and the valuation I guess bears it out, that it is a viable property that William Morris and IMG think that they could grow even stronger.
Well, you only really have to. I think a minority of people like it. I mean, as much as MMA fans think it's the greatest thing in the world, most people do not like fighting, MMA or boxing. But all you need is, if 10% of the population is willing to watch and accept it, and you expand all these, 10% of the U.S. is 32 million people. That's a huge market, considering the way everything's been, outside of NFL and the NBA playoffs, no one watches. You don't get large audiences for anything anymore. Star Wars, that's it. 32 million is a big fan base in Minnesota. I mean, in the United States now for anything. It's we've got a splintered audience on everything. And then
you forgot Pokemon. You forgot Pokemon.
Pokemon, yeah. Pokemon.
I still don't know what the hell this is. This Pokemon Go thing. I'm so confused by this. I really have no clue, and it's kind of freaking me out what's going on with this thing. But that's a niche audience like that. Niche audiences are huge. Marvel Comics is something of a niche audience, and it's huge. You get a niche audience. The niche will keep it a consistent pay, and then every once in a while you'll have a massive payday from some event. Some Conor McGregor shows up eventually. They might have a UFC version of the Mayweather-Pacquiao fight, although I don't think that'll ever happen in MMA just because the way there's no way to build it up big enough, long enough to make it that big in the UFC because they like pitting guys earlier in their careers against each other. But you'll still have you might have huge events, cultural events in the UFC every once in a while. A big Ronda Rousey fight that will do huge numbers and that'll expand beyond the core small niche audience. But the niche audience is enough to make this company a lot of money.
Right, and consider it's a global niche audience. I mean, niche audience is huge. Go ahead.
No, sir. 1% of the U.S. might not be a big audience. 1% of the globe is a monstrous audience.
Absolutely. And I want to see how this bears out. I imagine that, again, it feels like from what I know about them that they like using all their component businesses, like they call it, their platform. And so how can they use their platform here? And I wonder if there'll be a push to make this more mainstream and how effective it'll be. So expand your niche. But, I mean, I guess we'll have to wait and see on that. But speaking of that, John, you know these new buyers reasonably well. You're familiar with WME-IMG through your profession. So what inside info do you have for us?
Well, I mean, I don't deal with them directly because I'm just a lowly editor, post-production guy at my real world, breaking the fourth wall here. But my real job, I don't. But out here in Hollywood, William Morris, IMG's major players. They're a talent agency. They're no longer. The agencies are no longer traditional talent agencies. They represent actors and talent, but they've expanded into this. Years ago, the agencies expanded the idea that they'd put pieces together to make movies. They would be the ones that basically constructed the movies themselves for a studio and then have the studio sign on. But now they're even beyond that. They've expanded beyond talent in films and sports. That they go out and put pieces together of disparate companies, PBR, Pro Bull Riding, and then put it together with a conglomerate media company to get a platform for it. So they're working in pieces much bigger than they used to. And William Morris is pretty famous for being one of the most aggressive, ruthless, I guess. If people talk about Lorenzo Fertitta being ruthless, the Fertitta brothers, which they are famously ruthless, but William Morris maybe takes this to a new level. So they're hey, on behalf of their clients, it's often great. To be a William Morris client like The Rock, they're ruthless for you. On the other side, it might not be as good. You might not enjoy it as much if you have to deal with them. But that's them. So, but I guess with Jason, I should ask you, what do you expect from when you look at that group that put it together? And I guess the big question is, there was no Chinese group attached, like all the rumors had it. What do you think what do you expect them to be doing?
Well, I mean, I think that the sell is to utilize what William Morris and IMG have is their relationships outside of sport, and hopefully grow that. That's what I think that their sell would be. And then so what I mean is that you'll see more of Ronda Rousey or Conor McGregor or other fighters just interspersed in the entertainment world. I mean, I'm not sure how it would work out, but you could definitely see maybe a I don't know who do a Dominic Cruz on a guest spot on a show on a network show or this or that kind of thing. And then also I do think that there's still that Chinese part there where they do have relationships within China, from what I understand, to make inroads into the country and hopefully grow there, which is basically everybody's wish. I mean, you see the WWE do it. I mean, John Cena is talking Mandarin. The NBA has done it in the past. Those types of things. So, I mean, I think there will be another shot at making inroads within China, and not just Macau, but also actually mainland China.
Yeah, and William Morris, we should be noted, besides that no Chinese group invested in the UFC, William Morris has a lot of connections with Chinese companies where they've co-invested into properties together. They're friends with companies that have teamed up and represent Chinese, from Rain Corporation and stuff, the Rain Group, I mean, and William Morris, I think they just signed a couple deals where they're going to co-invest with Chinese properties. So there will be another company that might have some involvement with the UFC in the future that's right now not a partner or an owner in the UFC, or might not directly own the UFC, but maybe it'll be sold a piece of some property of the UFC. I have no clue. They work in ways that often don't quite make sense financially, because everything's just moving around. It's kind of like the old swaps that were taking place a few years back. Where you don't know quite. These are so complex, some of these ventures, you don't quite know how they're working. But
you'll see a fight night sponsored by Alibaba. Jack Ma. And it's like, what's going on?
Yeah, but that's my big complaint about William Morris too in the film industry. My rant earlier is they're one of the many companies that are so obsessed with doing business with China that they give China, basically send our industry to China, which we get no return from. We just lose the industry. And they give China control over the content we make. So we're actually catering to Chinese interests because we're so obsessed with getting a cut of that pie that we're eventually selling out our film industry in this country. And that's my rant. I'm done.
So do you have an equivalent rant to that with fighting, or no?
Well, we don't know yet. We haven't. Are we going to be catering so much to the Chinese market that we're going to ban in the U.S. market? Are they going to sit and say, well, we need Chinese fighters, so let's make a whole side promotion to the UFC and employ some, not be mean to Chinese fighters, but they're probably terrible right now because they have no fight industry, and let's, build up a whole Chinese wing of the UFC. I don't think that would bug me that much, as long as it was kept separate. But there's ways you can see it that they, as an American, we're all greedy. We want things put on, in America, done for our viewing pleasure. I mean, how frustrated are Americans going to be if they start scheduling the fight times for the better for the Chinese audience than for the American?
Yeah, I wonder how that will be. And real quick, just to let people know, an entity that's invested in William Morris is Softbank, that has a lot of Asian connections. Yeah. And then in June, they've signed a joint venture with Sequoia Capital. And for people who don't know Sequoia Capital, they are one of the best, or maybe arguably the best, venture capital firm out there. That's who they have working with them in China. I don't know what the UFC's connections were to try to get into China, but I mean, Sequoia Capital is a high-level connection. Alibaba, a high-level connection. I don't know too much about Softbank, but I guess they're reasonably high-level. I mean, if they're gonna make it work, it would seem like now's the time. I wonder how long would you guess it would be until we see our first show in mainland China, not fake China. I apologize. It's not fake China, but you know what I mean.
But Macau is not. Yeah, it's not. In mainland, I don't know, Jay. I mean, I'm guessing not next year, but I wouldn't be surprised. 2018.
2018, probably. I would think that would be. I know it's going to be it will be a huge thing, and it will be mainland China. I mean, it would. A lot of things will have to align for that to happen, but I do see that happening. And if it does, just my prediction, I have no insight on it. If it does, it will happen on Fight Pass.
Yeah, and I also have my prediction too is when they go into China, it won't be 1-2 shows a year like they did some territories. They're going to announce like they're going to be doing 8 to 10 shows a year, and they're going to have a Chinese wing. Yeah, because they'll make a deal with the Chinese TV station. They'll have all this lined up, and they'll start very quickly. They'll have a very large Chinese presence.
It'll be interesting what they do with the television deal there, or how that will work. But if Fight Pass proliferates into China, I mean, it'll be great.
Yeah, we got. Road's already doing shows in China, so
who?
You have Road FC.
Oh yeah.
Korean promotion. With the Hong Man Cho versus Well, Bob Sapp. Who the heck had? Who was
Bob
fighting?
Sapp's around.
Yeah, I can't remember. He put on a great performance. Whatever it was good.
That one. Yeah, I remember that clip. That was great.
I can't remember who that little. I don't want to be mean, people with body issues, but the man is a beast. Who the little beast guy was that knocked out him and then lost to Hongman Choi? That's the type of freak show, old-fashioned freak show tournaments. They're doing that, which is
that are fun, not sad.
I know the UFC is going to bring in legit MMA, and people are going to be like, "What? Huh? They're trained, they're conditioned, they could get hit. What is this madness?"
This is not fun. We should bring back the platform, the platform from China. Get that in the But yeah, that'll be interesting. I guess the question too is a lot of people, and everybody's been asking fighters this, and a lot of fighters have been saying this. But the $4 billion value, I know Ariel was asking everybody on the show, what do you make of the $4 billion valuation? Paul, if you're a guy in the UFC right now, what are you thinking?
What they're all saying. How come I didn't get any of that? What are you talking about? I mean, you've got to feel a little bit bad that you built up this company that's massive and you don't get a big cut of it. I don't know how you can see it any other way. I mean, it's true they did kind of save the sport, but in a way. But still, I would be thinking, how can I get some of this and I am dramatically underpaid? That's what I would be thinking. Now, the economist in me thinks a little bit differently about pay, but if I was a fighter, I would be a little bit pissed off. And unfortunately, like you just said, they're bringing in someone who's a even tougher negotiator. So to me, but looking at it a different way, the way I view it is if you're a marketable fighter, you might be happy about this. To me, it's more marketable, non-marketable, because while they might negotiate aggressively on the fighter pay side now, you're also an asset to the rest of their company. And they're going to want to put you out there if it'll generate value for the UFC or value for any other parts of the company. So it doesn't even have to be the UFC, right? It doesn't have to affect UFC revenues. But so if you're a marketable fighter, if you're a fighter people like, while there's a ton of money in this purchase price and they might be tough negotiators on the salary side, if they're really pushing you on the other side, I can see how you're a little bit happy about it. And I'd imagine if you're a big asset for them on the marketability side, that they might not negotiate as hard on the salary side. So to me, it's more about the type of fighter that you are. If you're a fighter that really, that's all you do, there's not much interest in you, but you win, then yeah, you're kind of coming out, I don't know if you'd say a loser in this deal, but maybe about the same. What do you think, Jason?
Here is something when you talk about marketable fighters, I think of two fighters in particular that will benefit greatly from this: Sage Northcutt and Paige Van Zandt. Right off the top of my head.
Those are the exact two I was thinking of. Go
ahead. Oh, really? Oh, wow. There you go. And the reason why is because both of them, as we've seen with Paige, Dancing with the Stars, she's great. In the cage, still has stuff to work on. But I mean, if you think about it, why would you, if you're her management team, why would you continue to fight if you have an asset to your face, that you can use for other endeavors? I mean, William Morris now can put her in movies, TV, whatever, and she'll grow from there. Sage Northcutt, that guy. I mean, just look at him. I mean, he's the anti-MMA guy, and I love him for it. But UFC 200, that showed you, that kind of showed you he still has a lot to learn. He's only 20, so I get it. But that guy can be used on your. I mean, my gosh, I could see him on a tween show where the teenage girls will love him, and he can make tons of money. And the entertainment side of this William Morris IMG experience will say, let's just leave that. We don't need that guy's face to be punched in or broken up. We need him for all of our other assets that we have. So I mean, those are two fighters I see that could greatly benefit from this. As far as other fighters that are not eloquent or just don't have those looks, it might be just more of the same, where you're show win type thing.
Now, with that in mind, I have a question. Does William Morris now start introducing 360-degree contracts? Because it's like, well, we have these other platforms. We don't want people benefiting from that. We want to benefit from that. And so it's, you'd have with the 360-degree contract, you get 360-degree contract. It's like, well, now we can offer you these opportunities, but we want to make sure we profit from them when we offer them.
Oh, and so just clarify that. I think I know what you mean, but for people listening as well, you mean when you sign with the UFC, you also sign with William Morris as your talent agent and this, that, and the other?
Sort of. The UFC will have access or rights or some sort of say over appearances on TV shows, other things outside of just outside of fighting. 360 contract gives you that you're the manager, the promoter, or whatever of everything that person does in the entertainment sphere.
Right, and that brings up an interesting point. If it's forced on you when you sign with the UFC, do you think there's any knack issues there?
You're asking Jason, right?
No, I'm asking you. I'm honestly asking either of you. But do you think there's any, manager, like right now, I don't think there's a manager-promoter firewall issue, but if...
No, well, it's weird because the way Nevada's regulations are written in the Athletic Commission, the regulations, you cannot be a promoter and profit in any way off a fighter outside of the fights you're promoting. In other words, you should not have any financial interest in a fighter. So if in that case, they would be in violation. I think but I don't think it'll be enforced. I think Nevada will they'll find a creative way to ignore it. I don't think they're going to say William Morris has got to give up Ronda Rousey now. But technically, when you read it, it's pretty obvious. You cannot have a financial interest in a fighter, beyond as a promoter. So you can't manage. They shouldn't be able to manage Ronda Rousey at all. That 360, I wonder if California has a little more stringent rules on some of that stuff. So I wonder what they would have on that. But I got a feeling it's going to be ignored again. That stuff just doesn't seem to be enforced ever.
Right.
Yeah, that would seem hard because then you would, if you do implement the 360 contract, you could say that you're representing them on the entertainment side, but not on the fight side, and you have some other, Lou DiBella kind of. Sorry, Lou DiBella. But you have some other promoter representing him on the fight side. I don't know how that work out.
Well, you don't have to claim you're managing him or anything. You're just saying we have the right to, we get because we're giving you this platform, we get the right to collect some sort of commission on any other deals that might arise that you got from being on this platform in our promotion.
Gosh, I'd have to. Yeah. That would be an interesting contract to look at.
Yeah. And people, I'm curious too how William Morris. What do you think? What are you thinking right now if you're a fighter represented by CAA?
I'm thinking that I'm going to be switching agencies soon.
It happens all the time in the industry, but I mean, I don't know.
People don't know they have a feud between those two agencies that is pretty hardcore. And so I'm curious about that. I'm curious if, with all these lawsuits floating around the antitrust and stuff, I'm curious if the UFC, the William Morris uses that to go after CAA because you can go in discovery phase and they can subpoena and call testimony and discovery too, just like the plaintiffs. They have that right. So shit, they could be harassing the hell out of CAA if they wanted to.
Who are the fighters who are with CAA?
Gil? Is it Gil?
Gilbert Melendez, Tim Kennedy is it George St. Pierre is, right? Because Rodolph and those guys, I think they're allied with CAA. Mm-hmm. Cain Velasquez, didn't he just sign with them?
I thought Cain and I want to say Chris Weidman, but that might not be correct.
I think that is correct, actually. I think Weidman is. So that's a pretty impressive roster they've collected. So that'll be intriguing to see where that goes, the CAA connection.
I can't wait to see how many of them switch. I mean, I'd imagine they'd be offering them like bundled packages, but maybe unbundled, but technically bundled packages, right? So you usually see when you've got two products versus someone's one. It's like, hey, take these two things together, and it'll give you a lower price, or lower cut or lower fees, whatever. I don't think Tim Kennedy will switch, right, out of principle. But you're
Well,
like, screw you guys.
I don't think any of those guys would switch because they're at the end of their career. It's new people sign up with them, knowing that they're on the outs with the owners of the UFC, that they're competing. Because all those guys they all are probably happy with what CAA is doing because CAA has already laid the groundwork how they're going to give them, jobs in movies or whatever, or commercial. These guys are at the end of their fight career. I don't think any of them are looking for a big contract, except for maybe George, but I guess maybe that explains why Dana White doesn't think St. Pierre's coming back. He seems pretty confident about that. And,
I would guess Weidman. He's not at the end of his career. I would guess someone like Weidman might switch. GSP maybe not. Tim Kennedy no, but a lot. What were the other names you mentioned?
Gilbert Melendez.
I think maybe not him.
I mean, they got him the gig at ESPN. I think that's and. I don't, I think that satisfies him, and they're probably projecting him for what his future after fighting would be too. So I don't know if it'd be worth switching over.
Yeah. So, but I guess so now. Okay, so that's those guys. What do you think fighters should be doing to, I guess, maximize their money now that they see that the promotions make? I mean, if you look at it, the promotion actually did better than we estimated. Their margins were at 40% EBITDA last year, so they're making better than we even thought. And
just to clarify that, so that you can tell people, your estimate for 2015 was, what was it, 99 EBITDA? Was it 99 million?
That was the year before 82. About 175, I think I was at the high end.
Oh, then was it 2014? Was it 2014?
Yeah, 2014.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it's gone from. It's gone from. Oh, go ahead.
I'll just say 2014 was the ending in September EBITDA. If you go to the end of the year, I was going to lower it. I lowered it at the end of the year 2014. So I was actually pleasantly surprised with everybody that helped me how close we actually were to the numbers, except we're slightly off on 20.
Right. It jumped from down there to 100 and what did you say, 50, 60 to 250.
I think 250. So it made 70 or 80 million more on EBITDA. So people are tuning out right now as we just go back and forth on EBITDA numbers right now. But it made 250 million, 40% margins, and also Dave Meltzer, not Frank. Dave Meltzer. Frank Meltzer is a guy who used to write for Dungeons and Dragons. Dave Meltzer. He came out and so going through the stuff that was sent out for the potential sale information they're giving out, that the fighters made between 75 and 85 million last year. So that reinforces our 15% number we came up with. It's actually lower than 15%, but still. So we were right, people, right there.
Give this man some credit.
But if you're a fighter and you're looking at the total numbers are 15%, and the UFC is making 40%, what are you? I personally think the new owners are going to give people raises because they're going to want to keep everybody happy. But it's when those new deals come in, when they add another 250 million for the TV deal and another 150 million off Fight Pass, that you're not going to get that big a cut of that. You're going to get very little of that, and those extra margins are going to go right to them. But so if you're a fighter, what do you do to start getting a bigger piece of the pie?
I'm gonna first off do an opposite prediction of you. I do not think they're going to get current raises, and when a big new deal comes in, then maybe we'll see the bump. Well, I think we see slight annual bumps. It's not major.
Yeah.
But I mean, if there is a bonus for hey, we're the new owners, it'll be like hardly any money. But so
no,
I have a different prediction. Well, who knows?
I think by the end of the year they'll start seeing the bottom beat instead of 10-10, 12-12 going next year's. That 12-12, and everybody will be a slight bump, and it'll be like, hey, we're making more, great. But then the year after that, they're making more, and yet the people don't realize that this will probably be the most profitable year they've ever had by far. I think, based on just the two giant blockbuster pay-per-views they've had already.
Oh yeah, they've had a great year already, and then we still have 2 major events left at least. Right.
Yeah.
But anyway, Jason, what do you think of the question? You're a fighter.
Buy your own gym. Start. It's hard to kind of to figure out what to do because you're basically. I don't know. I don't even know what you would do. What you would do. It's basically a little bit helpless as far as. what to do as a fighter. Maybe sharpen up your skills. Maybe become more marketable. Go see an acting coach. So when your interview, you speak well. I mean, I seriously, I'm not quite sure what as a fighter you would do, knowing that the new owners probably will be making a ton of money, and when you receive your 12-12, or and your locksteps are a couple of thousand each fight, and you fight 3 times a year, you know, what are you doing? I mean, the only other thing is, you know, you switch managements or to more of aggressive manager to see about getting you more fights or outside endeavors outside of, you know, the Reebok deal, but that doesn't really happen. So.
Yeah, I don't know if switching managers help, but I mean, I don't think management. I think people overestimate the amount of. There's no real negotiating. They say you fit this caliber of fighter. This is the price you get. There's very little negotiating with fighters, and I don't think, you know, people are going to say, well, fight it out and go to Bellator. I mean, what? I think I did an estimate. What is Bellator's budget on MMA? You know, UFC spent close to $400 million last year. Bellator spent $20 million on MMA last year. That was their budget, and they probably lost money. Why, you know, it's they're, you know, if you're Rory MacDonald, maybe you get a pay bump going to Bellator. You can get $250,000, but they can't take everybody, and they can't afford the top guys. They're not doing pay-per-views, so that's a limited option.
And the question about being a young guy like Rory MacDonald that we have not seen the answer to yet is, when your Bellator contract expires, do you have another bidder on the other end in the UFC, or are you pretty much stuck with one company? I mean, there's other options like ONE FC and whatnot, but would the UFC bid for you when your Bellator contract expires? I wonder. We haven't seen that. Right?
I mean, maybe you've already had your career path, and you know that after Bellator you're going to be doing something else. Who knows? You'll be like Benson Henderson, looking to become a police officer or something like that.
Right. For him, it's fine. Yeah.
But yeah, no, you're correct. Like, if Rory MacDonald just signs a 2-year deal, he'll still be under 30 when that's up. And if that's it, will the UFC take him back, or what? You know.
And what pressure can he get to get the UFC to take him back? See, if he leaves and goes to Bellator and they give him, let's say, $250,000 a year, and it's like, well, it's paying more than the UFC. I'll go with Bellator for 4 fights, and he wins the title, and he has after 4 fights. The UFC, I mean, what is the incentive for the UFC to bring him back for a lot more? He's got the Bellator title, but that does that mean much? Does it? He's not going to be killing it's not like he's going over there and there's a bunch of, you know, a murderer's row for him to face where he can go back and say, people can go, you know what? We wrote Rory off too soon. He's the #1 middleweight in the world. You know, welterweight, I mean. He should be #1. He proved it in his last 3 wins. There's really maybe one quality win he can get in Bellator. That's not going to be enough to make you that people are going to demand that you have to come back to the UFC. So your leverage is limited either way, and I don't see it being that helpful either. I think the thing I'm getting is, I think in a weird way, people talking about fighters need to form a union or an association. Never mind that you have to get employed before you form a union. I think they missed the boat on this. I think it's almost too late. It's over on that sense. You know, maybe if you form a union, you can do collective bargaining, but first you got to get declared an employee, and that's the part. It's pretty much the way the system is. This is it.
So Rob Mazy, if he knew what was going on right now, would want to call in and be like, "Shut up, John! John, what are you saying?"
Oh, probably, yeah. He's probably, yeah. This is, well, I mean, I understand what they're doing. I think that's one of the problems too. Is people are saying, like, the fighters should form an association. People have been talking about that, but it's a confused mess. Macy and those guys are trying it, but then the culinary union a year ago, remember, they launched something with the Teamsters, and then they abandoned it after, I don't know, what happened to that? So what good did that do, that another group tried to form an association, put all the attention on them, and then abandoned it, and left these guys still trying to do it? And then on the side, when you talk to people, you hear, like, managers and stuff are trying to start their own association. It's, you know, so it's a mess amongst the there's so many weird groups that have been trying to start associations, but I guess the only one that seems the most legit is probably the Macy guys, and they're on the outs for trying to sue the UFC at the same time. And people are because of that, fighters are terrified to be associated with them. So it's a catch-22. Your fighters are all like, we need to form an association, but I don't want to be appearing with these guys because the UFC hates these guys.
I mean, it really is. I mean, if you're not going to get, and you and I think have different opinions on this, because I mean, my view is that it will help a little bit, marginally help, but if you're not going to get declared employee, and that process will be hard, and someone has to take that path, and it costs money, and there's no big pot of money at the end to be able to do it on contingency, I don't think. And if you're not going to get declared an employee where you can collectively bargain, which I think would help. I know you're not as high as it on it as I am. I think a little bit.
I think it would help, but I just don't think you're dealing with a single entity monopoly. I mean, UFC is not a true monopoly or whatever. They don't own the 100% of the market, but I think there's no arguing at this point. When you look at the numbers UFC does compared to everybody else, they have some sort of market power over the high end of the MMA. It doesn't mean they obtained it illegally and they're going to lose the lawsuit. That's a whole separate question. But they dominate the market like no one. They are the major sports franchise of MMA, and I just don't see being a union would help. It'd be better than nothing, but you're not going to get much leverage out of a single entity monopoly.
See, that's John's position. Now my position is when you're a bunch of individuals against a single entity, that's a lot worse than being a single entity against a single entity. Now you have to threaten to strike and whatnot, but in a very weird way, not making much money now means a lot of these guys have to find a way to survive. And a lot of them work in gyms and teach and do whatever they need to do. So in a weird way, that gives you a little bit of leverage, a little bit more leverage in your strike, as opposed to being super rich, spending all your money every year, and then all of a sudden be like an NBA player. Wait, I have no money right now? I'm used to having like a few million? What is going on? Again, so no guarantees or anything, but to me, one, it's always better to be a single entity negotiating against someone else than a bunch of 500 other people. But then they might actually have a little bit of leverage to survive, given that they support themselves, a lot of them, already. I don't know, Jason, what do you think?
Yeah, I kind of side with you on that the fact that there are other avenues. I mean, you're heavyweight champions of firemen, and again, yeah, I think that it does that bargaining power, that there's other avenues for these fighters.
Well, okay, here's where I got to, again, I'm the pessimist. So, on all these, all the fighters that are very pro-association union are yelling at me and stuff. But my problem, too, is, okay, you can strike, but the guys you really want to influence that are the high-end guys, right? The only way someone who's making a lot of money is going to make their value is some sort of competition, some sort of, you're not going to get the McGregors and stuff are never going to get anything close to their value without a competitive market, and there's no competitive market. So you're asking these guys to go on strike with the guys at the bottom so they can get a pay raise, and the guys at the top are sitting there going, no, I don't want like some sort of insurance benefits or $10,000 extra dollars. I want to be able to get 20-30% of that pay-per-view instead of my 10%. Instead of watching the UFC and the owners walk away with 50, 60, 70% of what the pay-per-view brought in, I want a big cut of that, and I ain't going to get it. And going on strike ain't going to help me, because they'll just, they'll find someone else to fill the card at that time. So that's where
which raises the issue. Which raises the issue, though. I would think if they're part of the union, they would go along with it, I would think. But which raises the issue, if you were declared employees and then had to unionize, would these guys be on board? Would they join to begin with, right? Given what you might have to give up, and given that you might have to go along with strikes. So I think you make a really good point about would they be interested in joining to begin with. Although if it comes down to a vote, I'm not 100% sure how that works.
Well, you union cards and stuff. That's my thinking on the whole labor issue thing is and we're, like I said, I think the fighters missed their window of opportunity, because when there was, before the UFC completely owned the market, there were other avenues, and you could either put on your own fights or join Strike Force or something else. That was the moment where you would probably want to, if you had that's the time you wanted an association to basically alleviate the contracts that promoters had to make it easier to jump around and rate and make there's a competitive market now for everybody bidding. I just don't. I think Bellator is so far beyond. As much as people talk about Bellator, I don't see them being that party. So that's my pessimistic thought on that. So hey, good luck to you fighters. And good luck to all you managers that that probably talked their fighters out of doing stuff because they caved in and stuff. That you're stuck with 15% the rest of your life.
You keep going.
Yeah, no, that's
turn this into an Uber rant.
It's gonna be network. I'm mad as hell, and I'm not gonna. No, I'm not. I just talk to a lot of these guys, and I probably outside of the people in the business, and this is not bragging, I probably know more what fighters are actually making than anybody else because I'm up to, as I was talking to you about I've talked to you already about this, Paul, about the poll of fighters I've been taking about their actual income. I'm up to scores of fighters now. I'm probably up to 60 or so fighters and 200-300 purses of what their actual income is. So I have a better understanding probably of what the high end and the low end is, and compared to the industry, and they're not, I'm not saying they don't get paid anything. Some guys make very good money, but their piece of the pie is nowhere near what they probably think it should be. And I sit there and think, I don't think it'll ever be anywhere close to what you think it should be.
All right, so what do you think about that interchangeable parts argument? I don't know if we should go there. Maybe we shouldn't go there today. Should we go there today?
Well, we can go in. We can just edit it out if it gets that dumb, that boring.
Well, that's kind of, it's kind of the interchangeable parts argument, right?
Yeah.
At least, I guess, what the UFC would say.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. What do you guys think about that argument?
You're talking about just that fighters are interchangeable, and there's there's no unique value in them. Would that be?
What interchangeable parts means to me essentially is in my mind you drive no revenue. Because if you drive a lot of revenue, then I can't replace you with someone else.
Yeah.
In my mind, you drive virtually no revenue. That's what it means to me. Yeah. At least what they're saying, what they're arguing. Because, everyone knows McGregor is not an interchangeable part. GSP, you could even say, they don't even have to do the top guys. But, like Lineker is probably not an interchangeable part completely. At least some people get excited about him. But I don't know. So what do you guys think when you hear that?
I think it's mostly true, actually. I think most fighters are interchangeable parts. I think the UFC brand is the big thing. They pushed it. I think that's true. UFC's done a great job. They have this brand. I think the one thing missing, though, in that argument is fighters are interchangeable parts partly because there's no value outside the UFC for a fighter becoming a non-interchangeable part. In other words, in boxing, if you compare it to boxing, and people are going to freak out because people hate boxing, and boxing does have a lot of horrible things about it. I'm not going to defend it, but one thing about boxing is there's a lot of competition by promoters for boxers that don't push the needle yet. Why? Because they're hoping that guy will rise and be a needle pusher, and they're hoping that guy will rise and take a position in the IBF rankings or something that he can be a contender for the title. And because of that, all these promotions, Top Rank, Ludabella, Main Event, they have guys sitting on some ballroom, a club show, getting a pretty decent salary, maybe $50,000 they have to pay the guy, because they need to hang on to the guy and nurture him because they're hoping he turns into something that's a moneymaker. The UFC. Again, when we talk MMA, we just talk the UFC because the others don't matter. But the UFC, they pay better than everybody else, but they don't feel the need to sit there and pay, except for Sage. Basically, in boxing there's about 40 sages, in the UFC there's Sage. That's it. there's Sage. That's if people were trying to nurture potential contenders, big stars, you'd see a lot more sages, guys that are at the beginning of their careers who seem to be getting vastly overpaid. And we don't see that in MMA. And that's because there's no value in developing a fighter. The UFC doesn't need to develop a fighter. Their brand's so valuable. And if this guy fails, this guy will take his place. We don't have to worry about someone else capturing him.
Jason, what's your take?
That's I definitely agree with John. I was going to bring up the boxing analogy as well. I do think from a certain aspect there's a handful of boxers, and then that are non-interchangeable. However, John's point is taken as far as the fact that there are multiple promoters out there, your main events, your Lou DiBella, your Top Rank, your Golden Boy, that not sink, but provide an investment into boxers you don't necessarily know because of the hope that they will spring to the top of a HBO card or become a Terrence Crawford or somebody like that in the future. But with the UFC outside of Sage or something like that, we've seen this time and time and again where if someone can be easily replaced on the card. I mean, even UFC 200, John Jones was replaced. I mean, that's almost a prime example. John Jones replaced with Anderson Silva. I mean, that kind of shows you kind of the example that we might be talking about is that there is not a unique value in a certain fighters. But I mean, the other point is taken is that you think about somebody like Ronda Rousey. Well, there's somebody that could provide something unique because she's a woman, and she draws this niche of women, so much so that Good Morning America wants to have the UFC on their morning show.
Right. No, I agree.
I was just gonna say.
Oh, go ahead.
So we're talking God. Now we're like line up MMA. We're talking all the time. Just when we said we weren't going to do that, we didn't do that. But I was just going to add to that is there's all these guys that are needle movers all down the. I mean, people tune in to see Wonder Boy because they like to. He's not a big star, big pay-per-view, whatever. But people like Wonder Boy and they like Rory MacDonald. They like the idea that these are the top guys fighting. The advantage UFC's got, it's got 100 of these guys in its pocket. So all these guys might be needle movers and have value and add value to the broadcast. And some of them at the top, Daniel Cormier, and you got Anderson Silva's actually a star, a big mega star, and Misha Tate's well known. The thing is, UFC's got 100 of them. They got 100 of them lined up. So as valuable as you are to the promotion, every time anytime you want more, they can say, well, we don't need you. We can just skip you for the next person because we have another person lined up. They're all exclusively to us. We don't have to worry about that. You might be valuable to us, but you might add value to us, but you're not valuable to us.
Right. No, and I just want to add one other element to you. I agree with everything you guys are saying. But there's also the difference between a sport like the NBA where so these guys aren't employees and there's no collective bargaining, but it's like you could be in the NBA and other sports, it's much more about winning. You could be the San Antonio Spurs and win a lot, not in the most flashy or entertaining way, or the old school Knicks, right? Like late 90s, they were all about defense, hardly scoring any points, that weren't the most flashy or exciting, but they won. And winning drives viewers, and everybody wants to see it, even if you're not that exciting. Whereas here, winning matters, but it's a sport where people have got to like you. They've got to want to see you. You don't necessarily have to be flashy, but you have to be likable, and you got to have something about you where they want to tune in. And while they want you to win, even if you lose, sometimes it's okay. So it has that different element to it. Value is
prize fighting. Prize fighting is not sport. It's a separate beat. It's weird because winning is important. If you look at the guys and how they got big, even the guys that are major draws like Ronda Rousey, Conor McGregor, Brock Lesnar, they became super mega titanic draws after they won the title, after they proved that they're the best. And people like RDA, who's not really a draw, he's still a much bigger draw name when he won the lightweight title because he was a lightweight champion. He has value, so there's value in winning, and that's important. But it's the component of winning and being the best and being charismatic and having and having something about you that you're mesmerizing. We want to follow you because you say this insane shit, or because you're Nate Diaz and man alive, I can't believe the stuff you say. God bless the Diaz brothers.
The best thing about him is he's been the same all along, but all of a sudden, once he gets to say it against McGregor, now everybody.
There you go.
That's the components together. It's just being charismatic is not enough. You've got to also be charismatic and win. You can make money being charismatic. You can make money by winning. But if you put the two together, that's when you become a massive star in prize fighting. Except for Kimbo. Kimbo seems to be the exception, and I don't know how.
Right.
But partly I think
time and nobody cares.
I think part of the thing with Kimbo is he became a star on YouTube before in the image and stuff, and it's just this, he's our Bobby Olagun, the guy from Pride. People remember him. Pride fans remember Bobby. He was a TV talk show guy in Japan that just started fighting. And, he couldn't fight worth shit. He did win a couple times, but still. But that's Kimbo. He was the one guy that kind of broke that mold. Otherwise, you have to, it's very important that you've got to win, go up the rankings, win the championship, and if you win the championship, that's the key to becoming a draw. And on top of that, if you're charismatic, that's the key to being a superstar. And after you've done that, then you can stay at top. It doesn't even matter if you hold the belt anymore because people know who you are and they're intrigued and interested in you. That's the formula I've come up with. I don't know if it's accurate, but that's the way it seems to work.
So pivoting slightly here, unless you have anything else to add on this, let's take a spin off of what you wrote, John. If people haven't read it, how will we remember the Zuffa era this week? They should go online and read it. But looking back on Zuffa, how are you? You already wrote your piece, so let's start with Jason. Yeah. How are you gonna remember Zuffa?
For as much as we criticize it, I think that it for a lot of people was an experiment going outside the realm of traditional sports. For me, I distinctly remember getting into it around 2004, 2003, something around that time. Tito Ortiz, Ken Shamrock, those types of things. And when you're, and it's something that appealed to the younger audience. It was different. You came to and talked about it. If you recall, way back when, if you were a Friends fan, they had an episode where, what's her name? Courtney Cox's boyfriend wanted to become a cage fighter instead of becoming a venture capitalist, and they had Tank Abbott on the show. Talk about appearances, special appearances. But anyway, it started. I think that with all the criticism that Dana White and the Fertitta brothers really built something there with the help of a lot of fighters and a lot of other people, and with the blessing of commissions, that they came up with a sport, built it up, and now it's become something huge. And that's what I'll remember. I do, getting into this sport and writing about it. It's certainly changed over the 15 years I've followed it. It was much more accessible. You could talk to people. You could email a fighter, and they would email you back. I'm sure John could still do that. But it was much more easy. I could, I've been able to be in contact with the UFC way back when, and UFC would contact me. But they've gotten bigger, and I think that was one of the allures of the sport, because the accessibility of it at the beginning. So I definitely think that with all its faults, in the end, they were able to build something out of virtually nothing. John,
what's your take?
I have a pretty moral view of it, actually, not immoral, amoral. And my just so people know, it's my view. I like Jason. I got in the UFC 2002, 2003. That's when I'd watched a couple in the 90s, and I actually hated it. I hated it back then, but. By 2003, that's 2002, 2003, I was a big fan. So the UFC is what made me a fan of MMA. And then seeing Pride right after that, I'm like, this is the greatest thing in the world. A ring and a cage, you can't get any better than this. Two completely different types of sports that are the same thing. But the UFC, Zuffa deserves all the credit in the world for being smart, great businessmen, and being great promoters of the UFC and all that stuff. In a weird way, it reminds me of my Uber, which we always have discussions about me to call, and Walmart and Amazon, is where they have a business plan that the fans, the people that consume it, love. They love it. It's a great business plan for consumers. Walmart offers cheap products, everything in one location. The consumer loves it. It's cheap and it's all location. Uber offers cheap rides that are very convenient, very clean compared to terrible, what was terrible before about taxi cabs. Amazon, all this stuff, the internet. But what's forgotten is when you look behind it, you're like, well, there's stuff about the business model that I'm not a big fan of. And that's the same with the UFC. I love the product. I love what I got. I love a lot of the stuff they did. I love the way they expanded it to all these territories. They made it this huge business. But certain practices... Wow, that's the soundtrack from Texas Chainsaw Massacre there going right there. But certain practices that they did that I'm not a big fan of that. But it's not practices like the UFC is uniquely the evil guys and all this stuff. No, these are business practices that we find acceptable today. It's just that they leave that's the one part. And when I wrote that piece, it wasn't like I'm saying, we should remember Zuffa's bad guys. No, I'm just saying that for all the stuff Zuffa did, which is great and built the sport, let's not forget that one component of being so successful was that the idea is that they control the fighters that so much. And that was the one thing I wanted to remind people is that, which I'm sure everybody will forget in the future, it'll be completely forgotten, but on all the stuff the UFC did, that the one component, the one people that benefited not the least, because they did get benefits out of it, but the one group kind of ignored for all their sacrifice, all the stuff they did was the fighters. And so I think that's how I remember them, is they're guys that built a great business, but maybe they didn't have to be so ruthless when building it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the counter to that, which is I'm not going to make, but I think some people would say, is if the sport failed, an entire sport failed, is what would the fighters be doing right now? But that's not something I'm making. I'm just saying. But when I think
that's fair.
Investing $44 million, that's pretty ballsy. It helps to be a billionaire, I guess. Were they billionaires back in 2001? I don't know.
I think so. They had casinos.
Yeah.
They were worth a lot. I mean, they had the money. Lorenzo was put owner of the casinos at age 24.
Right.
But that was just an excuse to his dad because he couldn't go into Missouri because they had rules against his dad expanding the casinos in Missouri. But no, I agree, Paul. I think we can ignore it. They did kind of save the sport, the sense that there's an idea the sport might be dead. There's no way of knowing without getting in a time machine and going in an alternate history. But there's a chance that that's true. The sport that they did save the sport. And for that they should be credited, that they put so much effort. The $44 million that they put into it, I do agree with some. I think that's a lot, but we should question. Was it Nate Corey brings this up, and of course Nate Corey's not an unbiased source on this, but Nate Corey's point is, what did they put the money, that $44 million, into? I mean, it's one thing to compliment them for spending $44 million to keep the sport alive. There's another thing to say, well, you didn't have to spend $5 million to have a celebrity party one weekend. We don't know what that money was spent on. So I do find that when people bring that up all the time, that they spent $44 million, was that $44 million to keep the sport alive, or was that $44 million on terrible investments at times? Do we credit them for that they made terrible decisions back then? I don't know. That
is a good point. Did fighters at least get invited to the party?
I don't know. I'm not saying they spent $5 million on a celebrity. I just don't remember. They spent a lot on the Carmen Electra ads and stuff back then, all the advertising. Yeah. And do we credit them for that? Is that keeping the sport alive? To spend money on advertising for the UFC with Carmen Electra? I mean, I don't know. Is that how much of that do we say is that keeping the sport alive? Spending money on Carmen Electra back then? I don't know. And people probably think I sound like totally hate him or something, but I don't. I'm actually marvel. I think Dana White's kind of an inspirational figure. He's a guy that, and this is he was a boxercise instructor. That's not an insult.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
That's the truth. That's something. I mean, from a guy that I used to work shitty jobs my whole life, and I think my current job's shitty too. So that's inspirational. That guy with that, and he had access to some friends with money, but he had a vision, and he held on to it, and he grew it in the head of an actual legitimate sport around the world. I think though that's two different things. You can compliment them on all their success and all the work they did, and still criticize them for saying you didn't have to be so draconian to your talent. You didn't have to have such a tight iron grip on top of the sport. I think you can say both things.
You know, I just wanted to point out. I mean, if you had a high school friend, or you know, and they came to you with some sort of wacky business idea about buying a whole sports league, you know, and all that it took was $2 million. Still a lot of money, $2 million. And it would have been interesting to see what the business plan is and how far along. I mean, I'm sure in some autobiography way down the road, maybe Dana White will talk about this, but what transpired? You know, what was the business plan? Why did the Fertittas, take so much of a liking to Dana White that they'd sink $2 million into this thing and become a part of the company? I mean, they could have just gave them the money. I'm sure if they wanted to, but it's definitely interesting thing down the road. Maybe somebody already knows about the whole story, but like it would have been interesting to be a fly on the wall when he pitched the idea.
Well, letting him. Oh, go ahead.
No, you go, Paul. I'm just gonna.
No, I'm just saying it is impressive to let him take and I don't know when he got his ownership stake, right? They could have given him ownership phased in with RSUs and whatnot, but to invest your own money, I don't care how rich you are, to invest your own money into buying a business and then letting your friend, he probably didn't run the business back end, but at least run the fighting front end. I mean, you get that a lot. I hear that a lot, at least from people we have a lot of friends who are around here, people we meet who end up getting their MBA somewhere, and they're like, oh, you have this idea? Oh, I'll run it for you. And every time you're like, if I did have a great idea, why would I hire you to run it for me? Like, it doesn't compute in my head. But the Fertittas did that. They took their own money and let this other guy run at least one huge important component of it, which is the fighting front end, which always makes me laugh, right? Just because you constantly hear, at least again in my world, it's like, oh yeah, this is idea, I'll do it, I'll be your CEO.
Well, it's funny. It's weird because not weird. It's just hilarious in the sense that, I mean, Dana White. That story is the story why so many pro athletes are broke. A friend comes to me and goes, I got a great idea. Here's some money, and we'll start this business. Whatever. And the Fertitta's like, oh, yeah, here's the money. That's the story of every broke athlete. A buddy came to him, their old high school buddy came to him, asked for money with a great business idea. This is the story, and it could have ended that way if they probably quit when they put tens of millions into it. Again, we don't know what they spent it on, but again, it's still a lot of money. It's like, God damn it, why did we listen to you and do this business? Instead, they're walking away with, $1.6 billion each, both Fertittas. And whatever money they made over the years. But let's not forget, they made, God, hundreds of millions of dollars along the way, too. So this thing, this is your drunken high school buddy coming with an idiotic idea and going, my God, it turned out to be Google.
It turned out
to I think the reason they have those ideas is because every once in a while, one of them works. 9,999 fail and one works.
How many rich people are going to be giving money to their old high school buddies? He's going to come up and say, listen, I'm doing exactly what Dana White did. It worked for him. It's going to work for him. They're like, well, it worked for Dana White. For Fertittas, I should follow this guy's plan. And we should do this.
It's the new one. It's that one with the air ball that surrounds you while you go run and bump into people. Sport's going to be huge. You know what I'm talking about? Whatever the hell that thing is called.
But that's the part I marvel. It's an ingenious thing. Like again, my one criticism I said in the article, when you add up all the numbers made, it's possible that Dana White made more than all the fighters combined, and that's my only criticism in the sense that a sport that ostensibly the sport that we pretend is being sold to us as that we're watching it for the fighters. The idea that one guy that's a minority partner made more money than all of them, that's the part where I'm like, that just doesn't quite sit well with me. But again, that's shit. No one's sitting around complaining about the Walton family, how much money they got. Actually, they are, but no one's there's nothing you can do about it. But,
yeah, there's a lot of people complaining about Walton.
Yeah. Well, we got shit. She's running over people drunk left and right, and So.
And it only gets richer for Dana White. To see, do we know yet? We know it gets 9% of the new profits, right? But
Yeah,
he said he was going to be the owner.
yeah. I think I don't know if he gets. I think they're keeping this is not 100% sure, but this is what some people were theorizing and told me, is that when people talk about the lawsuit and all these other problems, one way that they can put set aside money is my feeling, and this is what people were telling me they think, is that the Fertittas and Dana White have to keep shares in the company, and that's part of the sale price. Is they deduct it. That way, if the lawsuit goes bad or something happens, guess what they lose? They lose their shares. It comes out of that. And for Dana White, the 9% it's not an ownership share. Basically, they're saying you get the same deal you had before, but you get to cash out your sale, your most of your shares. So you get to cash out, get the money, and because you were a 9% owner before, collecting 9% of the profits, he was already before, you'll keep your salary, whatever salary he has, plus the 9%.
See, I think what they're doing is, this is just a guess, is potentially giving him his 9% ownership, but because nobody's going to give you 9% of the company right away, there's a vesting schedule, but he wants to get paid that 9% along the way. So while his units are vesting,
maybe
getting paid that'd be another guess. I don't know.
That's my guess.
And I think there's an escrow option too. They could keep some of the sale price in escrow if the lawsuit goes bad.
Yeah, there's. I mean, no matter what though, no matter what, I'm sure that the new owners, they've inherited. There's probably $50 million taken from the sale being set aside to cover Boyd Schiller their price. That's that's taken out of the sales price as a set aside. Boyd Schiller's, because the new owners aren't going to I'm buying the company and then yes, we're going to spend tens of millions on a lawsuit. That was part of our plan. That's taken out. And then that the previous owners are going to be liable for the damages up to them. There's no way they're coming in and saying, oh, yeah, if we lose, we want to spend all the money. We want to pay for it. And that's got to be covered somehow. Or insurance is covering it. Someone's paying a massive insurance premium to cover that. But I really doubt that the new owners are walking in and saying, hey, we hold all liability. We'll take all your liabilities off your hand.
What do you think, Jason? Anything you might...
I kind of agree with John in the fact that when they acquire this, they want to make sure. I mean, when I assume when you acquire a company, when I advise people, is like you don't want to take on a liability that could blow up, which in this case would be the antitrust lawsuit. So I'm sure either insurance or the fact that there are some reservations related to the Fertittas and Dana White with the stock that they might hold in the new company. I mean, perhaps there's some side agreement there, but that would be my feeling, unless William Morris and IMG are so gung ho about this endeavor. About this, investment that they were willing to, have the possibility of a huge antitrust verdict come their way, but I kind of doubt it.
Okay, and another point, I've already written about this, and you guys know my opinion that I think that I do think it's actually not a good sign for the MMA Act, the Muhammad Ali Act. So, do you guys agree with that? Disagree with that? Jason, let's start with you.
I really am not a huge fan at this point of how the Ali Act is drafted, quite frankly. I think that if it is written in some sort of way, it'll have a better bite. But I mean, I definitely think that it might be if it is retooled, it might be have a better chance to help fighters. But as far as passage, I don't think. I think it's kind of DOA, dead on arrival.
Are there any what particular points are you not a huge fan of the way it's drafted?
Most of it. I just think that I wrote a piece for another website that kind of outlines the fact that the utility of it. If a fighter wants to sue under the Ali Act, it's going to take a lot of money and time and into getting what they probably want in terms of under the act. So I think that it could be drafted in a way in which it would be more friendly as far as the utility of the use as far as helping fighters protect them from unsavory business practices.
And that's the White Bronco piece, really quick.
The White Bronco, it's whitebronco.com. I could just kind of go through the Ali Act and several of the highlighted cases where boxers have sued their promoters for lack of disclosure, being coerced into signing a contract, things of that nature. And then there's only one case in which there was really any kind of relief, and that was the fact that it was a Jeff Lacey case in which that was pretty much egregious because the act specifically states that the promoter needs to show the fighter the disclosures, and in fact the promoter just showed the manager, not the fighter. So that he went on that kind of technicality. So otherwise, most of the time you spend a lot of money and you don't end up with what you need. So that's kind of
for anybody who cares about it, it was an excellent piece. If you care about the Ali Act, what he wrote about the way it's been, the litigation on it in boxing is an excellent piece. So, John, what do you think about the sale and Ali Act?
I think it's odds against the Ali Act was always, it's a bill, it's a new bill, it's low. Getting passed is low. I think, Ari Emanuel has a lot of political connections, so maybe it gets more difficult. I don't think it's a weird time right now, so I don't know if his connections are as deep-rooted or as powerful as if it matters as much as people think. My thing is, I don't think the Ali Act changes much because the UFC again controls the market so much. This is not boxing where if it was implemented like there was a PBC running things and Top Rank was trying to get in the market. This is the Ali Act will change UFC's business model a little bit, but it ain't gonna kill the UFC. They're just gonna have to change some of their business practices. I don't think it will do much because it's never enforced. I think if the Ali Act's going to do anything, the fighters got to guarantee that they make a pretty powerful or at least a decent enough association to enforce it. If the fighters can make an association, then the Ali Act might do something. If the fighters don't make an association, because without an association, you have the ABC is not enforcing the Ali Act. It'd be up to the association to enforce it. In that case, then you'd have teeth on it. But if you don't have an association, the Ali Act passes, it's not going to do much because no one ever enforces it. I mean, you'll have a handful of fighters suing, and that's it, and maybe winning their lawsuits because they're suing. But that's the only enforcement you'll see.
Right. So let's wrap this up with, unless you guys have other things, with the future. Yeah. What do you guys now that we know who's going to be the owner, and let's assume. They have to go through FTC approval, and we'll assume that they get it. I don't think there would be any problems there. So let's assume
there's no merger or anything. So
what's that?
There's no merger or anything like that. So
it's an acquisition.
Yeah, but I'm saying it's not. They're not crossing the. They're not. It's not any antitrust type merger problems.
So, yeah. I think what John's saying is that they're not direct competitors. But the purchase price of $4 billion definitely means you have to submit your paperwork. So we'll assume that passes. So what do you guys think about the future now with our new owners? And I know it's an open-ended question, but John, what do you think?
I don't know what to think. I guess wait and see. It's actually surprising how how small a story this kind of feels like in a bizarre way. I guess because everybody expected the sale for so long, it's not that shocking. I remember when Strikeforce happened, it blew everybody's mind because it happened over and out of left field. That felt bigger in a bizarre way. I don't know if you guys disagree, but people, for like the whole weekend, people were like, I can't believe this. But for the future, I don't think it's going to change much. Dana's going to be there. Actually, no, I take that back. It won't feel like it's much has changed for the first year because Dana's there, but I think with the way William Morris works, they have a blueprint where they're going to take the company, and starting a year from now, after next year, some point next year, you're going to start seeing a rapidly changing company in the sense that the UFC always brags that they're not in the fight business, they're in the media business. And I think William Morris is really going to take that to another level. It's going to be they're going to start using all the merchandising rights they have to fighters. They're going to start using their connections to Hollywood. They're going to start. Who knows? Maybe they'll start a film production. I don't know if that'll work though. I mean, how many fighters can really act? I mean, it's
WWE films, how successful that is.
But I definitely think they can use their synergy to make guys bigger stars and start branding items with their fighters. And of course, William Morris will collect, because William Morris will then be able to tie in the UFC and other agencies together. So they're going to make more media product with their fighters, and spread, build up Fight Pass, and make a shot at China. And then it's interesting too, and people don't know this, but apparently the Fox deal and the UFC's current distribution deals with the pay-per-view providers runs out the same year.
End of 2018?
2018. So that'll be something that I'm definitely sure that was not unintentional. That is something that they can take to Fox and say, well, if you pay us enough, or ESPN, we can move some of these fights off of pay-per-view. We don't have to provide as many pay-per-view shows as we promised in the past. Or the pay-per-view providers, hey, give us a much better cut, or you're losing out to Fight Pass and TV. So there's a lot of options for money making in the future.
It is the future, Jason.
I think short term, like I'm sure everybody thinks, short term there's not going to be a lot of changes, but I think once late 2017, you'll probably see subtle changes to the product. I think as we kind of identify, you don't buy a company or a property for $4 billion without a plan, and I'm certain that the plan was to exploit the fact that these rights fees were ending. The television deal and the distribution, the pay-per-view deals, those types of deals are ending, and use what William Morris and IMG have in using their that UFC, you could see that the UFC had made some investments in enhancing the product, appealed to its purchase, and you'll see in the coming years, that there'll be more ways to grow it, and I think that there'll be much more of a international presence, which will highlighted by China. I think a lot of the things will gravitate toward Fight Pass. You'll see a lot of the more robust over-the-top content like we've seen of recent, and that's how the company shall grow.
Yeah, I don't know if there's much more to add to what you guys said, except I agree that on the fight end, I don't see much changing, at least immediately. Every time I think of this deal, all I can think of is the back end. I just think of business and the back end, that we're getting essentially, I don't know the right way to say this, but kind of a business back end upgrade from a business perspective. For the fighters, especially the non-marketable ones, it's not necessarily going to be enjoyable for them, but it feels, when I think of the connection of Silver Lake and the Sequoia Capitals and those types of guys who are either part of this or advising, then I just feel like the UFC's business backend is getting a huge upgrade, and their biz dev opportunities and all the connections that they have and all the ways they try to expand markets and make better deals in the current markets, that's what we're going to slowly start seeing. And then with the connection to William Morris, they're going to essentially want to start mainstreamifying the sport if they can. And I don't know if it'll work, but it feels like the attempt's going to be made, and we're going to see if it works, and see if our sport can get out there more in the public eye.
IPO.
We never mentioned that. That is a possibility.
Who knows? Because that might be the build it up, and then with look at Disney's doing great with Pixar and Marvel now, but for years Disney had this inflated stock because Disney fans bought Disney stock no matter how bad they're doing. I wonder if someone's looking and go, we have a rapid fan base. We could sell really high stocks, and these guys would pay for this.
I don't know if they would spin off the UFC for an IPO. I hear the talk is about a WME IMG IPO, which would include the UFC now.
That adds value to it. So that's the other possibility.
Yeah, which would suck because they'd be public, but then they wouldn't have to disclose the individual UFC stuff that we still might not know about or have to get your connections on, right? Which is kind of like the Google Alphabet thing. Finally, we get to learn about Google isolated. from all the other stuff, but we'd be like, give us the UFC only.
You have to go through and just kind of like try to like decipher stuff, little hints. Well, this means this, and this means that. So that's really, yeah. That's like when you read the CBS, K10 reports and stuff to try to see what the pay-per-view numbers for Mayweather-Pac were.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Like, wait a minute. You got a previous year to this, and this is this, so that means that it did make a lot of money. It made a ton. But, so,
Fight Pass over I don't know how many years, but I'm so interested to see how they use that and how they leverage that.
Yeah, that'll be. What's weird is, remember how for years and years the whole thing was the UFC is a private company. We have no clue what they're up to. And like the last 6 months or years has been basically crap. We know everything now. This is what they've been doing.
Right.
Wow, that's what they were. This is now it's all open. So and that's kind of I found that kind of surprising. I mean, it's out of left field. It's like the last, it's like they finally just screw it. We're a private company. Let's just let this stuff float out there. We don't care anymore. We're selling.
Oh, one final thing. Do you think the culinary union will stop picking on the UFC if the Fertittas are gone?
I think they've already basically. I mean, they do a few articles, but that fighters agenda thing didn't last long.
Right, but they could always come up with something new. Or do you think because the Fertittas are gone, which is essentially Red Rock, right? Do you think that all of a sudden UFC is fit for children?
Yeah, I don't think they'll put much effort into the UFC anymore. It's not worth it.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
I mean,
Hey,
I think we're all.
Yeah, I don't. I think that's once the Fertittas leave, I don't think there's any more. They won't say they'll just go silent. That'll be it.
It'll be interesting to see what role that plays and the push behind associations and unions. But I guess we'll have to find out. You have anything else, guys? Anything else we need to talk about?
One thing to say is Brock Lesnar failed the drug test.
Right now?
Yeah, it's on. I just looked over the computer.
Breaking news.
Oh my.
Well.
What are you on? Fighting?
No, just Twitter. I just
Oh.
turned on my Twitter that was left open, and I looked over and I go, wait a minute.
Holy crap. Mark Hunt is sitting there.
Oh, what is...
Man, did you see the shape he was in? He was
great. He was in great shape. I guess we know why. Can you imagine if they didn't have Jones? If Jones wasn't revealed until after the fight that that he tested positive, you'd have two fighters off the biggest card of the year.
I guess though, my question is, and Jason, since you might know more about this because it's legal, but does this bring new scrutiny to Brock getting that waiver to appear only a month earlier?
Oh, I would suggest, however, that USADA language is so vague. The anti-doping, the waiver, it's so vague that you could, fit a Brinks truck through it. So I don't know how much USADA could go under. I'm sure they could, but they would just fall back on the fact that in the WWE he was supposedly under the quote-unquote wellness program. He was supposed to be drug tested in the WWE. So who knows? But you have all these things where he was supposed to be supposedly tested and whatnot. And the good news from this is that the USADA UFC anti-doping program is working.
Yeah, gonna work so well. There's gonna be nobody left.
Yeah. Do you think William Morris and IMG are thinking about what?
I've proposed a policy change to the USADA program though, and a lot of people freaked out when I did, and I wouldn't apply to this case, but I think fighters, when it's leading up to a fight and they sign a bout agreement, should have be allowed to sign an exemption, a waiver on their opponent, not that they be tested, but that they be pulled from the fight before it happens if he fails. And that way, because you think about it, how much money fighters potentially lose when their opponent gets pulled is they could lose fighting, they could lose their purse, they've spent money on training camp because they're independent contractors. If the fighter fails, though, I think that you don't report it, but after the bout, you reveal that he failed his test, so he can't possibly win the fight because he failed the test, so it goes down as a loss. And on top of that, he has to pay like basically all the money he made to the other fighter.
Jeez, that would be. I mean, the problem with that is like you got the tainted sample situation, or I did not know what I was smoking or eating, or what was going through my body. Argument.
Yeah, you can still contest it. I mean, you still have some system of contesting it, but you're not right now. I mean, there's a heavy potential that you're hurting not just the fighter. You're not punishing the fighter that failed. You're also potentially punishing the fighter that was going to face him.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know about taking the guy who fails. I don't know about taking all of his money because he's still got out there and competed. Yeah. But I mean, giving the opponent the option of saying, I don't care that he tested positive, I still want to fight. I mean, the regulators are going to be the people all over that. But just from a pure, sort of interpersonal point of view, I have no problem with it.
Yeah, and you have to do the sense you mark it before the tests start. You're like, okay, if he ends up failing, I don't want to know until after the bout, and then we can punish him. But yeah, you wouldn't do it like, oh, he failed. Do you want to have the fight? Oh, yeah, sure, because now I know I get half his money and he gets a loss no matter what. But the motivation not to cheat would still be there. The fight might be worse because a fighter gets caught after the fight is going to be out a lot. He's got to pay money now that he won, and on top of that, he gets a loss. And so it's still the motivation. There's still going to be a lot of incentive for a fighter not to be cheating. You'll go through it.
No, well, and you get the punishment afterwards. You still get your 2 years.
Yeah. On top of that,
yeah.
And a free punch to the gut from the other fighter. That's part of the rule too. Right? That's my hidden rule. Throw it right at the bottom of it. Damn it! You can't flex or anything either. You got to just take it.
No flexing. You get an additional one for flexing.
Mark Hunt loves your free punch idea right now.
Yeah, that's my. That's one of those weird things that people freak out when they hear because they're like, oh, it's the safety of the fighters. And I'm like, yeah, the safety of the fighters is great, but there's, I mean, fighting's dangerous and you got to look out their health, but there's also financial interest, and fighting is a financially dangerous sport too. You can be, every fight could cripple you financially.
In a way, we already know about the safety of the fighters. I mean, pretty much we know that vast majority, a ton of people were juicing already. We've been living in the fight world with juicing.
Yeah. We're so callous. We're so callous here. So callous. No.
This is going to be our next delve into the next show money. My gosh. I mean, Brock made the most ever reporter purse anyway.
Yeah.
$2.5 million. He probably made the most. He made more than that. Probably cleared what? 10?
Yeah.
Maybe. Close to 10. Close to 10.
No, I doubt it.
No.
I bet you. I only suppose he sold a little over 1 million buys, so he was probably around 5 or 6 million for the fight. And
still pretty good.
And then Anderson Silva, he got a side deal that pays I think a little over 2.5 million, and plus maybe some points. And
nice.
Cormier got points, so I mean, there's a handful of guys that made a pretty good money.
Oh, and by the way, who else do you think is really pissed? The WWE, because he was slated to fight. I mean, be featured next month. Now got a guy who has a drug failure.
Do they care? They don't. It's not a real sporting event. They don't.
It's not a real sport, but it really kind of damages the image. I mean,
People are shocked that people in pro wrestling are using steroids?
There's the appearance. They have the wellness policy.
Yeah.
I like how it's called the wellness policy. I always thought that was funny.
Yeah. I mean, it's weird for me because in a weird way, I think pro wrestling would be safer with some sort of, PEDS usage allowance because. But no, because God, this show is really getting off on tangent. We better quit soon. But just finish. Their bodies are put through so much damage. You'd think it's one thing to be taking an overdose on steroids and basically damaging your heart because you're taking so much to get these ridiculous builds. There's nothing to be taking some sort of testosterone to repair the damage to your body so you heal faster. For guys that are like being thrown on their back every night, 5 out of 7 nights of the week and stuff. In their 40s, half these wrestlers and stuff. Yeah. So
I think
yeah. Sorry, I just think there's some sort of performance allotment for.
Yeah, no, I think that I mean I understand. I think the problem that occurred, especially through the 90s, was the soma, the painkillers, the addiction to
Yeah.
those things amongst the wrestlers were one of the huge problems. So I think that's what kind of was one of the reasons why the drug testing in the WWE started to occur. It was implemented, and of course, once they became public, they had to instill something for their investors not to go crazy.
And I'm one of those guys that says it's WWE. I could care less about any of this talk. So, do we have anything else?
No, we're waiting. If anybody wants to buy our show out and offer us, we can go a lot lower than $4 billion. But
Think about our growth potential.
Huge growth potential.
You could sell sponsorship across the.
You could get new. You could replace us all with people that don't talk over each other. That'd be one. That'd be first step. And so we'll take. I think you come in with an offer of $400 or more, we might. We'll think about it. Under that, no, not gonna.
Starting price. All right, guys. So with that, thanks for hanging in there with us. On behalf of Jason Cruz and John Nash, I'm Paul Gift. Keep doing business as usual. We'll catch you next time.